This is the Lovefly podcast. Paul Tizard, fearofflying coach and Lovefly co-founder. Welcome. So welcome to this week's episode of Lovefly, Fear of Flying, and today's guest is Lindsey, whose your name on Instagram is Life of Lindsey.
Yep, that is correct.
And I've been dying to get Lindsey on for a while, ever since she came forward and offered, because she looks like she's got a really interesting story. So without further ado, welcome, Lindsey, and hope you enjoy your episode. I know you do follow the other podcasts, don't you? So
I do, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I listen to the podcast regularly. I love the community episodes more than any of the episodes. They're all great, and I love all the advice from all the pilots and everything as well. But hearing from other people who feel the same and people that are also in the group that we connect with all the time, they're just the best for me. So hoping I can give something back to at least one person.
Well, definitely. I think you've got quite an intriguing profile, because Life of Lindsey, when I've looked at that on Instagram, you've got lots of exotic pictures going on. So I'm thinking, why is she listening to the podcast? She's all over the place. And so, yeah, so I'm intrigued to know what the kind of the story is here.
Yeah. So yes, all over the place, mentally and physically, I think is quite appropriate. So my story, I guess, will start at the beginning. I didn't really fly much as a child. Our holidays were very much caravan, local, UK-based holidays. The first time I flew, I think I was 15, and we flew to Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't know, I live in Dubai currently, but I'm from the UK. So we used to have family friends that lived out here. So we used to visit quite often. And I was lucky enough to come when I was 15, which was many, 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 many years ago. And I wouldn't say I remember a lot about the flight, but I remember bits. So I know that we flew to Malta and then from Malta to Dubai. So it was like a couple of flights in one go. I remember being tearful on the way home. I wouldn't say I remember being scared, but I don't remember being excited or loving it at the same time. So
were you worried about the flight before you took it, when you were thinking about it?
Not that I remember, no. So I'm not sure if I was nervous or anxious then, or if I remember crying because I was crying leaving because we didn't want to come home. Like, I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah.
But that was my first flight experience, and my first trip abroad. And then I flew again when I was probably 18, 19, and I went to Cyprus on a friend holiday, but I flew by myself and met my friend there. And I do remember on the way home on that flight, it was quite bumpy. So Cyprus to the UK is what, 4 hours-ish?
Yeah, it's quite quick, yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 hours. It was pretty bumpy. And I do remember hating every second of it. I remember, I don't think I was crying, but I was really anxious. I really hated it. I was by myself. It was a night flight.
Yes.
It was just not very pleasant.
So all the ingredients there for the beginning of the fear.
Yeah, wonderful start. Yeah. Obviously all was fine. And then I don't think I flew again, maybe for a couple of years. But then I remember that was definitely the point where I was a nervous flyer, for sure.
Yes.
I not like flying. I would be anxious before I flew, which I would say it's quite normal for like younger people to maybe feel that way, especially if they've had some bad experiences to start with.
So would you still fly even though you were kind of not liking it? Yeah.
We didn't fly often. I'd say maybe once a year, like on a summer holiday, if that, maybe once every couple of years. But yeah, I would be anxious leading up to it. I wouldn't go into it as much as I do now, which I'll talk about later, but I definitely was not a fan, and it was uncomfortable for sure. But I still always did it because I just thought that's what you do. You fly places, no one likes it, it's normal, that's that. So during that time, I visited Dubai a couple of times more as well, and I really fell in love with the city, the people that were here. Like, they're like some of the best people in my life, like they're close family friends. And I made the decision that I was going to live there myself. So at that point in my life, I was maybe 21, 22. I didn't go to university, so I don't have a degree or anything. So the only real way that I could realistically look at moving was if I became Emirates cabin crew, which was just taking off. Great pun. They were really becoming quite a big airline, one of the best airlines.
Yeah.
It was like 2007. So they were recruiting like crazy. People were moving over there. It was the life. I was like, okay, well, let's try. Let's see what happens. So I tried and somehow managed to pass all the interview phases. And
so hang on a second. Whoa. So you joined cabin crew as a nervous flyer.
Yep.
This is great. Go on. Yeah, this is going to be a good story.
And my family were like, you don't like flying, you're crazy, what are you doing? That's how much I wanted to live here. And I was like, I'm going to make it happen no matter what. So I went through the interview process, no problem. Went to like the final stages and they emailed me saying, yep, you got the job, you start in like 2 months. So that meant moving to Dubai by myself. I was 21, I think, when I moved here the first time. And I remember sitting on the flight over here. I went to hide in the toilet and cried because I was convinced that the plane was going to crash, that like everyone on board.
So can I just understand the logic? So the toilet was safer in some way?
There's no logic.
Okay, that's all right. Just checking in case there was some sort of hidden secret tip here.
Couldn't let anyone know that I was upset and scared because obviously this is my job now.
Yeah.
So went to hide and did it in secret. Obviously moved here. When I moved here to do that, they start the training quite quickly. So it was like arrive one night, you get 1 day to settle into your apartment. The next day, that's it. You start your training.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was intense as well. It's 6 days a week training, starting with all the health and safety, the S&P stuff. And I loved it. Like I loved being here.
So this is great, by the way. So did it help? You know, because I remember from my own safety training that they show you all the thing when things have gone wrong in the past. They show you the videos, they show you all the footage of everything, and then they teach you the lessons. But I always wondered what that'd be like for a nervous flyer watching all of that.
It's weird when I'm not in the air. My brain is like, okay, there's a video of like a plane crash. It's fine. I'm not on that plane, so it's okay. I don't know. For somehow, some way, the training sort of cured me. Like, because I obviously learned about all the safety aspects of the plane, what to do. A lot of people in the group, they talk about like the bing bongs of like the phones and things. I know what that noise is. So that's never been something that makes me nervous. I know what they're doing. I remember in particular the survival training. So God forbid if there was ever an incident, which is very, very rare. I know statistics, blah, blah, blah. Like I just learned everything. So now, at the time, I obviously didn't realize this, but now I look back on it and I'm like, okay, so I was probably nervous of like being completely, had no knowledge of aviation, no knowledge of flying. And now I'm the opposite. Like I have all the knowledge and I'm going to do it like every day. And everyone around me does it every day. And I also think like once the training was done and we started flying, like, of course, there were still moments where like we'd have turbulence and it was like, okay, is this normal? But all the crew felt the same way, like quite standard. But I think also being busy and having to work on the flight, you're too busy to think about like, what's that bump? Or this doesn't feel right. You're too distracted. So I just think doing it more regularly, all the training that I learned, all the knowledge that I acquired, it literally cured me. I was fine. I loved to fly. I loved it. Like, I just loved it so much.
It sounds like quite a great lifestyle, actually. You know, you move over to Dubai, 21, 22, join an airline. I mean, amazing and brave, but amazing.
It was amazing. I was incredibly lucky. I didn't stay very long because like moving at 21 away from all my family and friends and realizing that once you live here, you're not here on holiday anymore. You're living and working. So you don't get to hang out with all the people that you know as much as you did when you're on holiday and stuff. So 21, quite young. I didn't stay for that long because I got really homesick. So I think I was here about 9 months, and then I went back to the UK. But it was an incredible experience, and I do not regret it at all. It was wonderful. So then we go back to the UK.
So you left the airline, did you then? Did you have to leave?
Right. Left the airline. I didn't work for an airline in the UK. I just went back home, and then just got like I think I worked in finance for a while after that. So normal office job in the city I lived in, completely different lifestyle. And then went back to normal English life. Flying was then not even an issue. I kept the love of flying. We would fly to Scotland, we would fly abroad. I think I went to America. Not an issue. Completely loved it.
There's a however coming up, isn't there?
Yeah, the story doesn't keep climbing. Yeah, so then fast forward to 2019. I was in a bit of a rut, not particularly happy with my life in the UK. I had been through some stuff, and I decided to sell everything I owned, including my house, all my personal belongings, and go traveling. I was like, I need to see the world. I feel like there's so much to see, and I just need a change. Yes. Don't know where it's going to lead me. I'm going to have obviously some money behind me. We'll just keep going until it runs out, basically. Again, flying was still not an issue. So no issue with that. Booked most of my flights for like 3 months, not even thinking about it. The first place, so I flew from London to LA, which is like a 11-hour flight. To this day, I still think that's the best flight I've ever had in my life. The flight was delayed by 2 hours, not even phased. Me now, oh my goodness, I would be like, why is it delayed? Why is it, oh, this is not good. Like there's something wrong. Didn't phase me at all. The 11 hours flew by. Don't even know what I did, but it was the best flight ever. No bumps, smooth. I think I flew with British Airways. It was really good. And then as my travels progressed, I had a couple of incidents, not serious incidents, but I think those couple of things triggered me, and my anxiety started to come back with flying.
So these incidents were non-flying related, I'm guessing?
No, they were flying related, like on the planes, yeah.
Right. Okay.
I don't know how much detail to go into.
Go into it. Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Trigger anyone else. So
too scary. I'll edit it out.
No, they're not. I don't think they're actually that scary. So the first one was when I was flying. I went to Hawaii, and I had to fly from one island to the other. So it's a super short flight. It's like 20 minutes. So you're on quite a small plane, not like a prop plane, but like probably like one of the small Airbuses or something.
So is it general aviation or commercial aviation? So did you have two pilots? Right, two pilots.
Yes, I think there was 2 pilots. Yeah. So we're about to take off. We're taxiing. We're gaining speed on the runway. All of a sudden, the plane slams the brakes on. Pilot comes on the speaker, and he's like, "Oh, there's a problem. We apologize. We need to go back in, and you probably have to change planes. You're going to be delayed." So everyone's like, "Oh, for God's sake!" Like, it's annoying. Fine. So we start taxiing back to the airport. And then he comes on the tannoy again. And to this day, I will never forget the exact words that he used. "We're going to give it another go." And I was like, sorry, you're going to give it another go? Like, it's a plane. It's not like, turning on the telly that didn't work. Like, it's a plane. Like, what do you mean you're going to give it another go? Anyway, we took off, did the flight. It was fine. I think.
Did you ever find out what was the problem? Why they?
I think it was something to do with the toilet. Maybe the toilet wasn't working or something. Like I think that's what the crew told us. But anyway, that happened, which I don't think is bad. But in my head, I was like, yeah, okay,
that's quite a dramatic sort of turn of events for a toilet. I mean, if it is the only toilet, it probably is a no-go item. But
well, for a 20-minute flight, maybe it's not that. I don't know. I don't know if it's that
Who
urgent.
knows? No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. Yeah.
I have no idea. But yeah, so that happened. But I think I think it's more his wording of how he announced it more than anything that made me think, hang on, like.
Yeah. So talk us through what happened then, because that's because obviously someone says whatever they say, and you could have one day might have just thought nothing of it, but on that day, for some reason, it triggered you.
I don't think it was just me. I think everybody, when he said it, like everybody on the plane was like, huh? And we all just looked at each other, and it was kind of like a collective, is this okay? Like, yeah, it was, I mean, obviously they wouldn't do it if it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
If it was a toilet problem, they know what it was, probably a light that wasn't on that should have been on. Like, it could be anything so small. But I think just being passengers that don't really know anything, we were all just a little bit like confused. And I think the confusion, the unknown again, it makes you nervous, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of them. I don't think that was like maybe a main trigger, because I do remember flying back from that island, and then from that island I flew to Japan on a night flight, and I was totally fine on those. I think that was really the main one, but it was a one. And then a couple of weeks later I flew, no, it's probably a couple of months later actually, I flew to Malaysia. From Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, I got again a smaller plane to one of the smaller islands. And this was a little bit more serious. So as we were taking off, we're in the air, we're climbing, all is fine. And then the plane dropped. Now I know air pockets, but air pockets aren't really a thing. So I don't know why we dropped, but we dropped, and everybody on the plane screamed. And that, I think, is the moment where I was like, oh no, no, that's not okay. Again, the flight was only like an hour. I don't remember enjoying a flight since that one. So I think that has really just set me back and just made me really uncomfortable again about flying. So I've gone from like loving flying, being okay with everything.
Yes.
To now all of a sudden, oh, my plane nearly fell out of the sky, which again does not happen. I know that's not a thing, but it felt like it was going to happen.
Yeah. So let's just sort of unpick this a bit. So the interesting thing for me is that the feelings, what happened to you, even so logically, you know, there's no air pockets, you know that it can't drop, but it feels like it drops because it moves very quickly, changes altitude, whatever you want to call it. So your physical stuff is very real for you, but you've still got the prior knowledge. So you're the most trained passenger probably on the flight, aren't you? You know, because you've been cabin crew, so you kind of got these. But then again, if I think about my own crew training, there was a lot of stuff you just don't know. So for example, I didn't think about air pockets when I was trained. It's just not something that come up. It's only something you hear about when you start helping nervous flyers, isn't it? So you don't necessarily know everything.
Yeah, so your training elements is put the hot drinks away, not what the
plane. You know the safety, and you kind of know, but you don't talk about things like when you talk about stages of flight. It's almost like, well, you're too busy working to think about it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. Keep going.
Yeah. So that happened, and I do remember being on the island that I went to, and I was on this island by myself, so had a lot of time to think because there was nothing on this island. And I remember being nervous about flying back to the mainland.
Yes.
And I hadn't felt like that before. Flew back to the mainland, had some time there. And I remember then I started, and I regret this, like to this day, I regret this because I know this is part of my own downfall. I started researching all the airlines and flights I still had booked. People write the craziest things on TripAdvisor, whether they're true or not. Some of the stuff I read was crazy. There was a couple of airlines as well, especially in that region of sort of Southeast Asia, like Malaysia, all that sort of area. There was a few airlines that made me uncomfortable after reading some reviews, some safety aspects. So I actually started canceling flights, losing money
Mm.
on flights that like I was like, I'm not flying with them. There is no way I'm getting on a plane.
Yes.
So I started changing some flights, and I think from that moment, that's when the fear was just ingrained. Like that was it. I was terrified of every single flight I took.
So how long ago was that? Sorry, just to give us a sort of dateline.
2019.
Right. Okay, so that's all within that year. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so pre-COVID and everything. So I remember so when I went back to the mainland in Malaysia, I was flying on Malaysian Airlines to, I think, India. I went to India with Malaysian Airlines. Now I remember the plane that went missing. Oh yeah, something else about me is, although I have loved, hated flying, I love aviation. Love it. So anything on the news about planes, or anything, like if I see airports or if there's anything on TV about airports, I am obsessed. Like I love it. It's just the actual flying bit that I'm not a fan of. So I remember reading so much about this Malaysian Airlines flight that disappeared. And there's actually a documentary on Netflix at the minute.
I saw that. Yeah, I'm not going to watch it.
It's actually really good. It's not really triggering, but obviously it's everyone.
Right, Lindsey, you might have changed my mind. I don't generally watch anything on TV, any films. The only one I watched was the one about Sully landing into the Hudson, because that was pretty true to the book. And then I thought that was fairly safe, and someone had told me. But the rest of them I didn't watch. But I might take a risk with you. Yeah. Not that I'm not worried about flying, but I can't watch anything where if they tell you untruths, I get really annoyed and want to hit the telly.
I'm surprised I can watch them, being somebody who really is an anxious flyer now, but I can watch things like that and it doesn't affect me or make me worse in any way. It's just like, as far as you know. Yeah, it's bizarre. Anyway, going back.
Yeah,
so I remember I remember being on this Malaysian Airlines flight to India, and it was the worst flight I've ever been on in my life from my own personal perspective.
Clarify.
So the plane was fine. The flight was fine. Obviously, you made it from A to B safely. But me as a person, I was like,
So okay, your experience of it was not
my experience.
Right.
Was awful. I was crying most of the time. There was a lady sitting next to me. She actually started trying to comfort me and talk to me because she could see how much I was working myself up. I couldn't eat food. Like, they served me my meal. I was like, I can't have this. I even asked them to take it away from me because I was feeling so I was on one of the galley seats. So, the seat with like the extra leg room.
Yeah.
I had quite a lot of space around me, but I was just like, I need this stuff out of my way. I can't have it here. It was a lot. Anyway, made it to India. Again, didn't really think about it for the time that I was there. And then I had to fly to Sri Lanka. Similar thing happened again, but it was a shorter flight. So I wasn't as anxious. And I think because it was maybe a different airline, my brain was like, oh, well, this will be better because it's not that particular airline, which is stupid, I know. But then I remember flying from Sri Lanka. I think I went back to Malaysia, actually. And that flight was basically a 5-hour panic attack on a plane. That was the worst one. And I remember getting off the flight just feeling so exhausted and so drained. Like, it wasn't an early morning flight, so I hadn't been up at the crack of dawn. It wasn't an unpleasant, it was actually quite a nice flight. Like, it was a nice airline. The crew had obviously seen there was something wrong with me and kept checking on me, which I thought was nice. But I was so anxious the whole flight. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't watch a movie.
So that 5 hours must have felt like forever.
It was, honestly, it was one of the worst experiences of my whole life. Like, it was really terrible. And that's when I was starting to question, how am I going to keep traveling if I can't fly like this? I can't get on planes and feel like this every time, because it's really ruining my experience. So you are somebody that likes to travel a lot, I'm guessing. So yeah, I love travel. And I'm also somebody who never lets anything that they're scared of stop them doing something. But I was now at a point where I can't do this. Like, I
Yes.
can't.
Yeah.
This is not good for me at all. So I think then when I was I was heading back to Malaysia because I was meeting my mum, and we were going to an island on the other side of the country that I hadn't been to before for like she was coming to meet me for 2 weeks. So I decided before she arrived that I was actually then going to book a flight home because I needed a break from traveling. And I didn't want to fly by myself. So I would fly home with her. So I remember she flew Emirates. So yeah, we went via Dubai again, back to the UK. And I remember crying on takeoff, and she was like, "You weren't kidding. You're really scared." Like, she was shocked how different I was since she'd flown with me. And she's not scared of flying. Like, it's weird, actually. Nobody in my life is afraid of flying. So whenever I fly with people, they will try and comfort you as best they can. And I'm sure other people from the group will kind of relate to this, they don't get it.
No.
Like, they don't understand. Like, they can say, "Oh, stop being silly," or "You're fine."
Helpful. Yeah. It'll be all right. Look at me,
helpful.
I'm not scared. Like, really helpful stuff. Yeah.
It's nice. I get it, but it's not fine for us. Like, it's horrible. So I went back to the UK for a short break. And then I actually had plans to come to Dubai because I had a course booked, which I was going to do and spend my birthday with some friends. And that's how I ended up living in Dubai, because I never left, just stayed here. And yeah, my flying anxiety has stayed. And I would now consider myself a really nervous flyer again. Obviously, we then had COVID. So nobody flew anywhere for quite some time. And I think the next time I flew, I can't remember if I went home first. I think I went on holiday first, but I can't remember where I went. But I flew. Oh, we went to Greece just as COVID was ending. And we flew with Wizz Air. So we went on a budget airline from Fly Wizz Air from Abu Dhabi. And I was very nervous, very nervous.
Yeah.
I think as well, not doing it for so long maybe made it a little bit, I wouldn't say worse, because it got pretty bad at the end there, but it wasn't great. And I think as well, because the airport was always the best part for me, and everything was still closed and weird. I didn't like that either. And it was just
There's like some sort of zombie attack, wasn't it? Like, it would be
it was so bizarre. So bizarre. But, like I said, I'm never going to let it stop me going places, because that's just not who I am. I will always still face my fears.
Yeah.
I became cabin crew when I was scared of flying. So going on holiday is,
yes,
simple, right?
Yeah.
So then I came back from Greece on that holiday, and then I think I flew back to the UK later that year. So that was like my first longer flight in a while. And I got back that was my boyfriend actually upgraded me to business on that flight to the UK. He was like, "If you're flying by yourself, you need some support. Is some points upgrade." And that did help, but obviously we can't all afford to fly business all the time, sadly. So yeah, now I decided that it was time to kind of, what can I do to help with this? Because I used to love flying, and I want to be the person that loves flying again. I want to be the person that's not fazed by anything. Delays, what airline I'm flying on, what seat I'm sitting in, like all those things, they come into my brain now. So I think it was just before my holiday last summer that I started thinking, like, what can I do? I thought about hypnotherapy. I thought about, self-help books. Is there anything else? And I saw somebody I follow on Instagram post about a podcast to help with anxious feelings around flying. Now, I can't remember if it was the Lovefly podcast that she posted, but I then started looking for podcasts and found the Lovefly podcast. And that's how I found the Lovefly.
And now you're on it.
And now I'm on the podcast and a fully fledged member of the group. But honestly, like, is one of the best things I found. Like, it
Well, that's nice.
was all I listened to for about a month before my holiday last summer, and it really, really did help. I flew to Zanzibar from Dubai on a 737 MAX, which is one of the planes that gets a lot of talk in the group because of certain things that have happened in the past. It would have made me extremely nervous if I hadn't have had the podcast to listen to, the people to talk to in the group, seeing other people's experiences.
Yes.
I still feel anxious when I fly, but I'm definitely not as bad as I used to be. Definitely not. I think I actually posted after that first flight to Zanzibar, and I think I tagged Lovefly, and I was like, I can't believe I just did like this flight.
Yeah. We made it. I think we made it an inspiring post. If someone puts a post like that, and they put a little picture in there, that's straight into the inspiring post category. Yeah.
I was amazed, and my boyfriend was amazed as well. He was like, I can't believe how good you were compared to the last time we flew.
Yeah.
You were like a different person. I did sleep quite a lot because it was, I think our flight was at like 3 a.m. So I hadn't been to sleep. But no, it was such a difference. So then I spent, yeah, it is amazing, honestly. And I listened to so many podcasts before I came, and I was like, yeah, whatever, this is never going to work. And it just did. It really did.
How the hell does it work then?
I have no idea. I think, firstly, knowing that there's so many other people that think the same things that I think is so reassuring. Like, I don't feel stupid. I don't feel irrational, but I still know my fear is irrational because I can rationalize everything. But I think I understand what I'm thinking more. So like the way that you and people in the podcast have spoken about catastrophizing your thoughts.
Yes.
I 100% do that every time. It's like, I'm not scared of the flying from A to B. I'm scared, when we take off, the plane's going to explode.
Yeah, so it's A, no B.
You can't get much worse than that, right? That's like the biggest catastrophe ever. But that's my fear. Or we're going to have.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that would actually, I'd be okay with that because I wouldn't know anything about it. So it's fine. Sure I was hoping to go A to B. It didn't happen, but I didn't know anything about it. I think that's all right. That's not a bad way to go. If you get to choose, that's
ways.
it's not on the menu. So you've shifted quite a bit by the sound of it, which is really good to hear.
Yeah, there's definitely been a big shift. I still struggle for sure. And I think one thing I really need to work on more is when I go somewhere, you get distracted by where you are. And I've heard other people say this as well. So you're having a great holiday, you forget everything. I've done it, I've made it. Oh, now I need to fly home.
Oh, crap. Got to go back.
And we've done no work, and now we're getting on the plane. And for me, flying back is quite often worse because I'm not as excited to go somewhere new. So I think the fear can be more prominent than the excitement of traveling. So I quite often feel worse on the way home. So I'm really conscious of not drinking too much coffee. Like if it's when I fly back, I always book day flights. Don't like taking off in the dark. Although I sleep a bit more, but I worry more when it's a night flight. I flew literally a couple of weeks ago, and this time on the way home, I was quite anxious before we flew back. Like I was really quite tearful all morning, and I decided to tell the crew. I've never told the crew before. I always just feel like they don't really care, or I'm just going to be a burden.
So honestly, this is an ex-cabin crew person. Okay, just,
Right, yeah.
I'm not telling them, they don't care. Well, I didn't care when I did it. Is that what you're saying?
Nobody ever told me they were nervous.
No.
So
that's because you didn't look like you didn't care. They probably thought, no point telling her. Yeah. I'm just joking. It wasn't really on your radar then either, though, was it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it wasn't. So I probably didn't even notice if someone was nervous as well. But also, I think we hide it quite well. Well, I know I do. Like I I'll full on cry during takeoff. I have no issue with that. People around me must be like, oh my God, is she okay? Whilst I'm like filming for my Instagram out of the window, like completely fake what you don't see on the other side of that camera. But to the crew, if they're like, are you okay? It's always, yeah, I'm totally fine. I could be having a complete meltdown, but no, I'm fine.
Always get emotional about takeoffs. Don't mind me.
I'm so much right. Landing doesn't.
It's the moment of commitment, though, isn't it? You know, so it's for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think hearing you say that to some other people quite often, I think that's exactly what it is. Like, this is it. I'm here. I'm stuck on this plane. Like, this is it. But yeah, I told the crew this time, started getting upset whilst I was telling her, and she was amazing. She was so lovely. She brought me some biscuits. So if you ever want some free biscuits, just tell someone you're scared of flying.
Even if you're not.
Yeah. Even if you're not, get some free biscuits. I think
biscuits aren't guaranteed, though, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, no.
It's not. I don't want to overpromise. There's no guarantee of biscuits.
You might just get some crackers instead. Yeah, but I think she must have told another crew member, and that crew member also kept checking on me. They asked if I wanted drinks. It was really nice. And to be honest, after the takeoff, I was completely fine. Have any turbulence. I was quite happy watching my films. We had dinner, like landing isn't a problem. So I was completely fine. But it was nice to know that somebody was there to check on me, just in case I wasn't. Like my boyfriend check on me, but he was probably asleep or something. So yeah. So that is basically my story in a nutshell.
That's a good story. That's a great story. So a couple of things then. So let's do we'll talk about the rational thing. I want to talk about that again. The other thing is the return flights being worse. I think that's a really interesting one. Let's do that. Let's do it reversal. So I might have said this in the past, but we used to get, when I worked for an airline, most of our complaints tended to be return flights from passengers who aren't nervous, because of some of the factors you've said, that they're coming back, they haven't got quite the desire to go. So the journey on the way out, whilst a pain in the butt, you can kind of go, well, we've got the exciting thing at the end, but the journey back, although it's nice to come home and everything, you just want to get home. Enough already, it's like, if I could just press a button and zap myself there. So people who aren't scared will have that. So often people feel like, and also night flights, we're often tired, a bit cranky. We could be on a different time zone, our body is. And all of these things throw up extra reasons to feel anxious, even without being scared of flying. So it's not a surprise to me that you kind of plump for a day flight. I like day flights personally as well, because I just feel I get off and I feel tired from traveling, but I don't feel like I'm all over the place with my body clock. Whereas a night flight completely throws me, because you like lose a night's sleep, so you land feeling even more crap, don't you? So I think that's quite sensible. And the other thing I thought about was when you talked about, I know it's irrational, and there's quite a lot of stuff written about this. So two of the professors that came onto the podcast talk about it, and in their research they classify it as irrational because of the risk level is so low that's actually irrational. But I'm not so sure, you see. So I've often said it's an incorrect risk assessment, which you would have heard me say. But as I've thought about it more and more and speak to more people about it, I think there is something, I think it's completely understandable to be fearful of something that's just so weird, isn't it? I think in 100 years, we haven't evolved, and yet we're able to jump into the air in a big tin tube thing, composite, sorry, not tin, and fly around at 500 miles an hour at altitudes we couldn't normally breathe at. I mean, so it makes sense to me to be unsure of it. That's like a natural thing. So this rational, irrational thing, I'm not sure where I stand on it now. I know what the professors say, but I wonder if it's actually just not helpful to even classify it either way, because it's like, it almost like give yourself another kicking, so I know I'm being irrational, but what difference does it make whether it's rational, irrational? I just don't like it. It doesn't matter. Someone else putting that judgment onto it almost makes it feel like we get another reason to beat ourselves up. That's just my take on it, for what it's worth.
I feel like, because I think I use that more because I know the rational side of flying. I understand the logic, the physics, the safety things. I know everything is safe. I know we're going to get from A. I know 100,000 people in the city that I live in fly every day. Like, there's one of the busiest airports in the world 40 minutes down the road from me. But my particular flight, oh no, that's going to be terrible. That's going to be the worst thing ever.
It's been singled out.
Yeah, completely. I'm going to sit at the back of the plane. It's going to be terrible. If I sat at the front of the plane, I'd probably have had more luck.
No, you're right. It is irrational. I take all that back. Yeah, you're off your head.
That's why I feel like it's irrational, because my head knows like all the good, positive, safe. Yeah. And I don't know if it's like the other part of my brain or my heart or my gut. It is like, no, hi, you're wrong.
So I think that's a nice way to think about it. It's just that rather than sort of label, if I may say, because I feel great for you telling your story. Now I'm giving you advice and you didn't ask for any. I think it might be more helpful to think of it like that. So like one part of me feels like that and the other part of me doesn't. That makes more sense, because we've got more evolved parts of our brains and more basic, like fearful parts. Yeah. And it's that sort of the interplay between the two. And I think that people who aren't scared of flying are either never thought about it, or secondly, they're using their sort of rational brain to soothe the parts of their more primeval brain. I think that's what might be going on. But you're just kind of sensitive to both at the moment. You sort of got that like a seesaw thing, isn't it? You're in the middle of it, kind of seeing both of them. Which one's going to go today?
I do have I am an anxious person generally. I would say I have generalized anxiety. I'm anxious about driving. I'm anxious about being a passenger in a car. Like, there's
Has that always been the case?
No, I do actually think it's been worse the last sort of, as I get older, especially like the last maybe 3 to 5 years, I would say it's really developed.
Well, that's quite normal.
Well, driving here as well is not quite the same as driving in the UK. So
yes, I've heard that. I've never driven over there, but I've heard that it's an interesting experience.
I wonder as well, like, if it's a bit of a control thing. Like, I'm very much someone who does like to be in control. So like with the driving thing, I can drive myself and other people and not worry whatsoever. But if I'm a passenger, I'm all over the place. Like, I don't like it at all. I'm the annoying girlfriend that brakes with the non-brake pedal with your foot, and I'll watch that car that's 50 miles ahead of us. And
yeah, you sound like a great company. Yeah, so no, yeah, I'm just taking the mic. But yeah, so I think that's quite normal, actually. I think I often find that people who confess to the control thing will say, I don't like being a passenger in the car. And I wonder if many people do.
Yeah.
Like whether it's actually it's more normal than we give ourselves credit for, because we expect to be so perfect and together all the time that no, I don't like being a passenger in a car very often. There's only a couple of people that I like that when they drive, but there are several people when I drive in the car with them I don't relax, and others I'm not braking. So it could be something about the person, it could be the scenario, it could be just that you're a nightmare regardless, in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I said, come on the podcast, get insulted. I'm not coming back. I'm not listening to any more of those. Load of rubbish.
I was expecting it. I'm not going to lie. One thing that I did actually, just to throw another edge to my story. So last year, I think it was after the successful flight, I was well into the podcasts. I was starting to post quite a lot in the group. I flew a plane myself.
Ooh.
I keep forgetting I did this, which still blows my mind a little bit.
Yes, so, I remember the video.
Yeah. So
She looked like sheer delight. I remember that now. It was like,
I can remember how I found it or why I decided to do it, but I did. Again, this is another face your fears in the most dramatic way possible. So there's a little private airport not far from here where you can do, what do they call them? Are they initiation flights?
Yeah, trial flights or something.
Initiation flight, they call them something. So you can pay to basically go up in this tiny little plane It's not even like a Cessna plane. I know Geeta was talking about her private plane recently. It's a little bit smaller, I think, than a Cessna. One propeller on the front, fixed wing. Mine was red, so it literally looked like a little red toy plane. And you go up in this plane with the pilot.
Helpful.
And then best to have someone there that knows what they're doing.
I like that. Yeah, I'm a bit of a stickler for that.
They will just give the controls to you and you fly the plane. And I think I was still on a real high from coming back from my holiday where I'd had such a great flight experience. And I was like, we need to keep this ball rolling. So I decided to do this flight and it was amazing. It was so good. I think actually I'd listened to a podcast episode with Captain Chris, and I think maybe he put the idea in my head. I think he was talking about people becoming pilots and they start with like a flight just to test how it feels, to see if you like it. I think that's maybe where I got the idea. So off I went, so easily influenced. But it was incredible. It was such a good thing. I need to do it again because I said I was going to do it so frequently and it was going to help me. And I haven't done it since. So I need to.
Did it help you at the time?
I remember taking off and being really excited. Even though I was in a tiny, I don't fly in small planes. I will not fly in a plane that is not commercial aviation, like the smallest Airbus, 2 lanes, 1 aisle. That's the smallest plane I will fly on. I'm not getting on a plane if it's got propellers. And it's funny because we were in Zanzibar airport about to fly home. And obviously you've got all the little prop planes that fly from mainland Africa to this island. And I was like, you will never get me on a prop plane. 3 weeks later, I'm flying my own prop plane. Like, what?
No, if anyone hasn't seen that, I remember that now. You reminded me. It was one of those ones, which this hopefully doesn't sound weird, but I replayed your video many times because I said to a friend of mine, John, who's in the group, I just said, if you want to see what pure joy looks like, look at this video, because your face when you look round is just incredulous and you literally are beaming. And that's why I played it several times. I just thought, well, this is somebody just having just such fun, or such delight. It was amazing.
Like how a normal person can fly a plane. Like wasn't even something that crossed my mind a few weeks before that.
Yeah.
But here I am doing it and it was so easy to do. I mean, I'm not saying like I'm flying around, turning around the buildings and landing and taking off and stuff, and there's a lot of, I was frozen, so much concentration. Do not move the line. Do not move the line. Yeah, it was incredible. Complete transparency though, I will say after we'd been up there for about 20 minutes, half an hour. So the route that they fly is literally along the coastline of the country. And as you get further north, you then approach the mountains. So there's quite a lot of air currents and things.
Yeah.
So as the day, I think it was still quite hot. So as the weather warms up in the morning, the hot air then starts. It wasn't the smoothest flight. After about half an hour, I was getting quite uncomfortable with sort of the bumps, even though I knew we were really safe. We weren't particularly high. You can open the door quite easily if anything was to happen. But I was a bit anxious and I was looking forward to going back to land. So again, I need to do more so that I get more used to it. And it's not a case of just, I fly planes now and I'm cured and everything's great, because everything is still very much a work in progress.
Yeah. No, I'm really pleased because I got the sense that you'd made some progress, but you're not where you want to be yet. And I like stories like that because then there's a chance that we can have a Lindsey part 2, when you're further along, because I like those before and after type things, although you're well along the way now. You're not at the before, you're at the during stage.
Yeah, definitely during. There's my personal end goal is to be completely cured, to love flying again, to have no anxiety. And it may sound unrealistic to some people. And I know some people say, I don't think you can ever be cured. I think you'll always have it. I have been cured. I've done it before. I know I can do it again. It's just rationalizing, having the tools, having the people, and doing the work to get there. So
Well, you're certainly doing that. That's really good. So,
trying.
have you got a point? Yeah, have you got a point in the future where you're thinking, I'm going to get there by, or are you being kind of like emergent, see what happens?
I'm very much being gentle with myself. I don't fly regularly enough to give myself, and I'm still very much a which plane am I flying on, where am I going to sit person. When I booked our flights, I think I posted in the group as well, like, should I sit in the back or should I sit in the middle? Like, it was,
I remember that one.
it was a thing, like, and I sat at the back, and guess what, it was fine. And actually it was quite nice because the cabin was so big and we were right at the back, so we had so much room. So yeah, it doesn't matter where you sit on the plane, it's fine. So I think my next goal would be to not really care about where I sit or which plane I'm flying on when I fly.
Okay, that's quite a reasonable sort of next step as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely feel when I fly Emirates, I'm a lot less anxious. But I've always preferred them as an airline, previous loyalties, but I just feel safer when I'm on their planes. I don't know. It's not rational in my head.
Well, it's familiarity, isn't it?
I'm more comfortable. They're bigger planes, some of them, yeah, they're not brand new anymore, but I'm more comfortable. It's familiar to me. I know where things are. The crew look familiar. I know that they're going in and out of where I live regularly. It's a comfort thing. So I need to push myself out of that comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, a couple of questions then. You know what's coming? Bit of wisdom or anything you'd like to share, like any advice if you have to sort of sum up. And secondly, I'm curious as well what your next sort of steps are in terms of beating the fear.
Advice and pearls of wisdom.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Some gold, please. Yeah.
I think I know people doubt themselves and they doubt their journey and they question whether they will ever, there's a plane flying over me right now, whether they will ever be able to fly comfortably. My words of advice would just be believe in yourself, keep doing the work with the podcasts and whatever else works for you, the checklist, the water thing, tips and tricks, and our bag of goodies that we have. Whatever works for you, but just give yourself some credit. And you could sit there one day saying, I can't get on this plane, and then tomorrow you could be flying the plane. So be that person that flies the plane.
Nice, like that one. That's good.
That's my advice. Anything is possible.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. That would be a good place to finish the podcast. But I'm actually also curious that what's your next steps?
Just keep listening to all the wonderful people in this community, connecting in the Facebook group. I feel like sometimes I write a little bit too much in the group, but then I'm like, no, do you know what?
There is good.
I like connecting with all the people in the group and relating to everyone. So that honestly, it really helps me. The podcast is probably one of my biggest tools. When I'm on a flight, if I feel nervous or anxious at the time, I stick a podcast in and it just instantly calms me down. Like just hearing the familiarity of all the voices. One of my favorite episodes is Captain Emma. There's something about her voice that just...
Yeah, she's great, isn't she?
Love that episode that she did.
First or the second one? She did two.
I think it was the first.
That's all right. I'm just curious. Yeah, because I was going to ask you actually if there's particular podcasts that you recommend. So you like the one with Captain Emma. So there's two with Captain Emma. Yeah. Anybody else?
There was somebody I listened to recently on the flight home, and I've completely forgotten her name. I want to say Amanda, but I don't know if that's correct.
What did she talk about?
She was at a point where she also wanted to just beat her fear of flying. She did some trial flights with a friend around a local airport. She spoke about, she used to talk to Gina quite a lot, but Gina doesn't really post in the group much anymore. It was quite a recent episode because I listened to it ago. And obviously Geeta is wonderful. Her energy is amazing. And it was funny when I flew that plane, she actually messaged me and was like, hey, I'm doing my license. And I was like, that's amazing. There was a time where I was looking at doing it too, but I'm not in a position for that at the moment, but maybe in the future. So yeah, I find her really inspiring.
Yeah, she is amazing. And I don't know how she finds the time to contribute so much. And there are quite a few people who do a lot, because I can see obviously the stats, but Geeta is still the most prolific contributor at the moment, which is just phenomenal, really. I don't know if she left the group, we'd have to close it. I don't know what we'd do. We'd have to do some work then, so
keeping it alive.
No, but you all do. I mean, it's everyone doing a little bit is what makes it so active, and that was always the plan when we started it, and it was just a sort of an idea. And to see it growing now, I think we're coming up to 1.7, which is amazing, really, isn't it? I know there are bigger groups out there and all the rest of it, but we've been tried to carefully let people in and make sure that they're not let, because I can't be doing with when people's particularly sensationalized stuff, like I want the questions so we can answer it, but I was really worried that we might get people that didn't want to beat their fear, that just come in and just sort of make everybody else feel worse. And so that's the thing I watch out for. I'd hate that to happen, where people, well, I don't mind people can ask anything they like, because that's the whole point, isn't it? Sometimes it might be you don't want to read it, but I used to have that on fear of flying courses all the time. They'd say I was all right till I started talking to that person. I hadn't even thought about that thing to be scared of. So, but this is what the point of it is. Let's get it all out, And so keep doing what you're doing, Lindsey.
Thank you.
So if anyone wants to follow you, it's
The Life of Lindsey.
The Life of Lindsey. Yeah, that's right. I know we do follow you. Because you post so many exotic pictures, I was like, is this a person that's just flying all the time? What's she doing in the group? Is she secretly like a pilot? I couldn't work out what your story was. So that's really interesting for me. And I really applaud the effort that you've done to get to where you are. You beat it once, then it's dipped again, and now you're back on the way out. I think it's very inspiring.
Thank you. Honestly, I don't think I would have made so much progress without the group and without the podcast and all the tips and everything. So thank you to you and to everybody in the group. Like, honestly, you're my people, and I will continue to contribute as much as possible. I know, heart shapes.
we had to do the audio description then, because obviously it was no one's going to see it on the podcast. Yeah,
it's my favorite emoji.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And do let us know. Keep posting. We want to see the pictures still. That's amazing. And if there's anything we can do to help, and you want to come back when you're further along and tell us how you're doing it, it's really interesting that to see people's progress. And the same applies to you. So we'd love to hear from you again when you're further along. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing. So I think it's just very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Lovefly podcast. I hope you found it useful. Now, as always, if you need any extra help, please join our Lovefly Facebook group. You can also follow us on Instagram at loveflyhelp. And also, if you go to our website, which is lovefly.co.uk/shop, you can see other ways that you can get some help.